Hello, and welcome to my top 10 movies of 2021. I want to get straight into it. I'm just going to say that there is one movie here that I do spoil quite extensively, but there's a spoiler warning beforehand, so you'll know when you get to it. And this is a combination of my subjective and objective thoughts, so the ratings I've given them will not always perfectly line up with the rankings, as that often is. Other than that, there's nothing else to say. So, before the top 10, I'm going to quickly go over the categories of movies that I saw this year that didn't make the official list. Here are the ones I have nothing to say about whatsoever. Here are the bad ones. Here are the ones I liked, but not enough to get them on the actual list. Here are the ones I thought were alright. And here are the ones that I didn't like, but everybody else did. Alright, cool. Starting off at number 13, yeah, that's right. There's more than 10 entries in this list. If you have a problem with that, go outside and meet some real people. Starting off at number 13 is shit. In my written review, I said that this movie is like somebody let all of A24's movies out of a cage and Uncut Gems fucked Lady Bird, and I'm still yet to find a better way of describing it. It's this modern, sexually ambiguous quasi-horror drama that follows a girl named Danielle navigating a family gathering, enveloped by the most relatable presentation of social pressure-induced anxiety I've ever seen in a movie. I personally related very closely to what it is that Emma Seligman finds so uncomfortable in Shiver Baby. It's stylistically intense while still having extremely intimate, well-done character moments. It was a blast to watch. I think it needed a bolder ending for sure, and a stronger narrative throughline would have helped achieve that. It's often said that conflict is at the center of all screenwriting, and this needed a clearer setup for exactly what was stopping Danielle from leaving the Shiver and what her ultimate goals were as a character. And while this movie is funny, a more consistent flow of jokes would have bolstered its watchability, especially considering how absurd the situation is as a whole. Definitely watch this if you're into indie filmmaking, or if you're just a bit bisexual. To put it simply, Malignant is kind of bad for about 45 minutes, then some shit happens and it becomes the best schlock horror movie of the last few years. James Wan just knows what he's doing when he sits down to make a horror movie. I regret ever losing faith in it because he pulled it out of the bag so hard with an incredibly entertaining last act that I'm just gonna trust the dude no matter what he makes. I found this to also be a movie that grew on me over time, which I didn't expect. It's one of the small handful I actually want to have at home so I can revisit it in the future. I'm the biggest sucker for original ideas, especially in horror, so this was just my jam. If you want to see an ultra gory remix on the contemporary horror formula with the balls for an 18A certificate that created a memorable villain without any necessity for sequels, then watch this movie, you fucking idiot. Firstly, I just want to say that I understand that this movie wasn't without its flaws. I think it's Edgar Wright's weakest non-documentary movie, but overall, it's backed up by some amazing filmmaking decisions, and this is the important thing in my opinion. Despite all that stuff, it's a really good time. It's stylish, it's visually extravagant, the work done on the sets, the costuming, the effects, the choreography. I was convinced and involved by all of the work done there. From a character perspective, sure, that girl in Eloise's uni sure as hell ain't no Gary fucking King, but there are some high points here for sure. Ellie herself was a unique, investable and adorable protagonist that Thomasin McKenzie carries the movie with. Sandy was a badass. It was great to see Matt Smith grooving it up. It was a good time. My only real problems surround the subject matter and the structure decisions. The feminist overtones get really ham-handed for me and push the idea to the point of it feeling false and exaggerated. The movie also peaks around the midpoint for me just when we visit 60 Soho for the first time. The feeling of escapism I got from that part of the film was really something special, and the dance also happens to be the best sequence in the whole movie. So, beyond that, the narrative and the ending especially can get muddled up in things that I, as an audience member, hadn't been able to invest in for a complete payoff. I get why people didn't enjoy this movie for sure, but at the same time, I think the negative reactions were a bit exaggerated because of the godlike pedestal Edgar Wright's been put on, and that this will garner some more love and adoration as time passes. I'm gonna make a video ranking the Craig Bond films at some point, but for now there's still some stuff to say. The amount of content Cary Fukunaga managed to fit into this one film was insane. It's the best Bond script we've had since Casino Royale. It shows him at his most human and his most vulnerable. I don't mean physically in the vein of something like Skyfall by showing a 007 that's all beaten down and shaggy-faced, but by showing us one that has to confront the emotional complexity of the situations that occur in the story. The action is great in its focus on pace and presentation. The new characters are very welcome and add to the movie. It's got to be the funniest Bond movie for sure. The opening scene is one of the best things in the Craig reboot saga. The character moments are raw and full of gravitas. Oh, and Ana de Armas. As far as mainstream musicals go, this was just so much better than it had any right being. I haven't seen Hamilton because I refused to, fuck Hamilton, but this actually made me think that Lin-Manuel Miranda might not be so bad. The way he takes Jonathan Larson's original story and songs and recontextualizes them as a story about the original show of Tick Tick Boom and Larson's other works is so clever and fun. Sometimes the songs play as part of the show, sometimes as replications of the events that inspired the show, sometimes as accentuations of things Jonathan Larson imagined. If it sounds confusing, just watch the movie and you'll understand. Emotionally, this hits so much harder too in the knowledge that every note of music you hear was written by the man it's all about. If anything, Miranda's story changes only made better what Larson originally created, while still crucially delivering on the main pursuit of artistic greatness narrative that actually ended up speaking to me more than anything else in the film. 2021 is the year that the world fell in love with Andrew Garfield, and that is a world that I'm very much a part of. We'll get to the main reason later, but his exhilarating performance in this was also a big part of that, especially considering Garfield's superhuman voice training where he basically just learned how to sing for a professional musical production in 1 year flat. There are several bangers in this, and there's nothing more important in a musical than your soundtrack, although I gotta be honest, Come to Your Senses just really doesn't hit though. This is like the whitest movie ever, but I really dug it. Alana Haim. Fuck. If you're ever gonna see a clear-cut movie star in their debut, then this has got to be it. Electric, on point, all those good words. She was the bomb in this movie, and I get the feeling that she had an awesome time making it from her performance. Period pieces don't really resonate with me for their period pieciness, because I guess I'm just not old enough to have lived in any of the time settings that modern filmmakers are trying to recreate, but Licorice Pizza has got to be a personal favourite of mine on that front. I resonated with the overall vibe here deeply, and for no discernible reason it transported me to 1970s LA better than most films have transported me anywhere. It's also a love story, one done authentically, and the romantic theatrics all really worked their magic on me. This left me feeling all warm and fuzzy in the parts where Phantom Thread left me cold, and I loved all that stuff apart from the very obvious glaring issue that makes it so strange and problematic. I do think PTA made the decision to give these characters the ages that he did from a place of honesty, because apparently that's what it was like at the time, and I guess it's better than if it were the other way around, but still, come on man, you had every chance not to do this. Now the reason it worked for me was because based on how these actors look and behave, I saw Gary as someone older than 15 and Alana as someone younger than 25. How old exactly? Who knows, but that's the effect it had on me at face value anyway. The age gap's even bigger in real life too. She's 30 years old and this motherfucker was literally born 3 months before I was, so you know what that means? I got a chance, I'm just saying. Spencer is a great example of something that isn't entirely my thing, but that I admire besides that because I found it objectively masterful, and the things I did love about it, I loved a lot. K-Stu must win Best Actress. If she doesn't, there's gonna be problems. It's what's gonna happen. This should probably win Best Cinematography too, because it has some of the most genuinely beautiful shots I think I've ever seen in a movie. What this film taps into, humanizing an icon, grounding the demons she faced, and fleshing out what it would have been like to live in her shoes, it's a phenomenal achievement. It's fragile and delicate a lot of the time, occasionally hurtling headfirst into her demons in a way that's morbid and a bit uncanny, but never playing like Pablo Larraín is reveling in those moments. All of it comes from a place of human decency and makes the inflections of horror found throughout frighteningly grounded in their use. There's a quaintly nostalgic quality to it too. Faded photo frame color palettes, tensely personal shots that linger on characters' faces one moment at a time. If nothing else, Spencer will go down as one hell of a mood piece. So I said I was going to spoil one of the films on this list, and this is the one. So if you haven't seen it, don't watch this part of the video. I literally get into all the big stuff that happened. There's a time code on screen you can skip to if you don't want to see it. And we're going to start talking about it in 3, 2, 1. I had an absolute riot of a time seeing this in a packed theatre full of people who'd spent the last year and a half wanting one thing more than anything else in the entire world, and about 90 minutes into the movie, we all got exactly what we came for. People have been saying this, but audiences in the UK do not cheer at stuff in cinemas, so when I tell you that when the room of people I was sat with erupted when Andrew and Toby came out. I do mean it. It's a pretty simple movie to love, but I still stand by everything I said in my initial review, and I love No Way Home for its ambitiousness and genuine love for the Spider-Man character and his mythos. It's popcorn entertainment done right, as well as being a lot more than that. Thumbs up all round for fixing a lot of my issues with the last two Spidey films and for establishing interesting futures for all three Spider-Mans that featured, even if they aren't all going to be revisited. Andrew Garfield, I don't really need to reiterate, he just threw his all into this role and reinterpreted his Peter Parker as the type of down-on-his-luck basket case in need of a serious self-esteem boost that you might find 15 years or so into a comic arc. It's nothing but a sheer credit to Garfield's capabilities as both an actor and as a sex symbol that he was the lesser anticipated of the two returning Spideys before the movie's release, but suddenly became all anyone has been talking about since No Way Home actually dropped. Willem Dafoe also showed up and amazingly topped his Green Goblin performance from Spider-Man 1. This is the best on-screen villain that Spider-Man has ever faced. In general, I can't think of a project that had this much riding on hype and spectacle that didn't drop the ball or end up a fun time that was otherwise a scatterbrained mess. It's about as good as it was ever going to be, really. This one caught me completely off guard. I was going to see Spencer instead of this, but it was showing at the same time and it looked like it may be the last screening, so I said, what the hell, and I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it. As someone who has no particular affection for the medieval genre, the real thing that drew me in about this was the sublime character drama from the writers and actors. The way The Last Duel uses its Rashomon structure to gradually inform its audience of its characters is really elaborate and intriguing. I hung on every scene in a way I hardly ever do. It's a story about betrayal, rising tensions, political power, character motivation, and grit that I couldn't help but get completely wrapped up in. Adam Driver is tied with Andrew Garfield as my favourite actor of our times, and this is the movie that made me realise why. The specific reason being that every single movie I've seen him in, apart from BlacKkKlansman, he's given the best performance in that movie. There's no one else I can say that about. He's just so next level. Love Jodie Comer in this. The final battle's one of the best I've ever seen and the tensest I've been in a theatre all year. Bring on The Last Duel 2. Titan actually ended up being my most anticipated film of the year. I saw it only a month ago, so it could get even better for me as the weeks go by, but as of right now, I'm of the opinion that it's excellent. It embodies the experimentality of modern filmmaking in a similar way to Parasite in 2019, as it repurposes a lot of traditional story devices and elements of film language to create something unique in its very roots. I took my mum the second time, then she said it was the most bizarre film she'd ever watched, and I can see a lot of people feeling that way. It's unflinchingly bizarre on a number of levels. The edit means that sometimes you'll just drop right out of a scene and into the middle of another one. The score is at once operatic and chilling in the same moment, and oh yeah, this is a movie where a girl fucks a car, murders 3 people in a violent killing spree, then breaks her own nose and shaves off her eyebrows. It's definitely not for everyone. To be honest, it's not even entirely for me, but I love it all the same. For about 40 minutes, it was everything I could have wanted and caught that flair of original horror magic I've been thirsty for since Midsommar. Then it basically switches into a whole other movie, which is still jarring for me in how harshly it juxtaposes the first act, but I loved what followed in an entirely new and different way. There are no bump-in-the-night theatrics or jump scares, but Titan maintains an uncomfortable tension in the viewer's understanding that something really nasty could happen at any second. Agath Roussel gave the best performance of the year. It was basically physical theatre at a lot of points. Top to bottom, it's incredibly evocative and subjective, like a lot of my favourites are. I've read this in so many ways and as so many things, but it would be a disservice to the film to elaborate on them for people who haven't seen it. It's clear Julia Ducournau wants to take elevated horror to new levels, and she's definitely on her way. A big improvement on what Raw accomplished, and one I could see myself bumping up to a 9 in the future. If The Last Duel was the tensest I've been all year, then The Suicide Squad was definitely the most fun I had with a new movie. Between this and the 2 Guardians movies, this is definitely my favourite. It's what got me on board with James Gunn as a filmmaker, and I'm of the opinion that it's the best superhero flick we've seen since Avengers Infinity War. Balls to the wall, guts and glory, The Suicide Squad pulls no punches, doesn't slow down for a second, makes no apologies, and has a whale of a time being the punchiest, poppiest, goriest, most batshit bonkers, fucknut jumbo insane superhero movie in a really long time. Why was John Cena my favourite part of this? How did the decision to make a giant starfish the main villain actually pay off? What the fuck is going on? You have visuals in this to rival anything else that came out this year, embracing the comic book style in a fashion no other flick could have until now. I love the title cards that change what the letters are made from every time they appear, the expertly choreographed action shots, the free flow energy of every scene where the story can just go wherever the hell it wants. It's overindulgent and a bit too much, but in the best way. Some of the jokes tried too hard for a laugh, but John Cena's character makes peace with that single-handedly, and actually acts as an impressive indictment of how well the film can transition between comedy and drama. The jokes hit big at times, but when the shit gets real, it gets real. I can see myself watching this 15 more times before I'm dead. It took me a bit of time to get here, but I think Annette is just so brilliant. I definitely recommend listening to some of the music of Sparks, the band who created the story as well as composing all the music for this musical, or watching Edgar Wright's documentary on them. Their artistic identity can be felt all throughout. Just like a lot of their music, Annette is stilted, humorously direct and erratic, and at its heart very emotional. It's the messiest film I've ever seen that I can't call messy in the slightest. In any other movie, this pace and structure would be so inconsistent and unfitting, but somehow it works perfectly for where this film goes, its style, and for the ideas it wants to communicate. It's also shot and lit gorgeously. There's something about Leos Carax's framing and colour palettes that just arouses me, frankly. The main reason, if I'm honest, for Annette's inclusion this high up is the music. It's incredible. Similar to all my favourite music in film and television, this soundtrack is brimming with motifs. Motifs that are beautiful musically and used with real purpose and gravitas. I talked about Adam Driver earlier, and in my humble opinion, this is his best performance. There are various minutes-long one-takes of him doing elaborate in-character stand-up bits, and the level of physical control needed for those moments especially is astounding. Annette was one of those I walked out of thinking, maybe not for me. Not that I didn't get any of its ideas, I just found it so overwhelmingly strange that none of the deeper meaning had any effect on me. Luckily enough, the friend I saw it with found out that it was one of his new favourites, and through our discussions about it and developing my own thoughts, I gradually fell in love with it. It's a niche, melancholic story where forces of an angry cynicism and a tender tragedy can be felt warring on a stage built from elements equally gothic and fairy tale. If you're into musicals that get a bit weirdo and love to challenge the form, then watch Annette. So yeah, Inside is a masterpiece. I wrote a gushing review about this that encapsulated all my immediate emotional reactions from it, and everything I say here will probably be a retread of something I've already said there, so I'll try and summarize. Bo Burnham has been my favourite artist for 5 years as of this January, and I think that after following him for all this time, this is the best thing he's ever done. Inside is so many things at once. It's a comedy special, it's a meta-narrative reflexive docudrama about someone creating a comedy special, it's a commentary on Bo's entire body of work. It's a commentary on the bridging of the socio-economic gap between corporate influence and the emotional intelligence of today's general public, especially our youth. It's an experiential wonder. It's an artistically explosive, neon-enthused nightmare about loneliness, about sadness, about the fears of the dauntingness of the future and of the pain of regretting the past that we can all relate to. It's packed to the absolute brim with purposeful filmmaking and extended metaphors, retaining an honest, artful level of introspection no matter how absurd or dark it gets. Bo had parts in his previous specials where he momentarily dropped the ironic detachment and artifice to show us some of his most honest thoughts, most notably toward the finale of Make Happy. This feels like a deep unraveling of the blackness he's only dabbled in before to paint a portrait of Bo more honest and vulnerable than it's ever been. Seeing him back after so much time away was an incredibly fulfilling experience and made me want what I was watching to not end as I haven't in so long. There's so much more I would need to say to be able to fully explain how I feel about Inside, but until my 2-hour special on it comes out on my podcast that doesn't exist, I'll have to leave it at what I say here. A deeply existential, eclectic, operatic, electronic odyssey of anguished emotional outpouring and artistic brutality. It's just outstanding. I can't see myself rewatching it very often because I've listened to the insanely good soundtrack too many times, and other than that, my only real complaint is that there was no Adam Driver, so I'm gonna have to give it a 0 out of 10, bad movie. And that about does it for my top 10 movies of 2021. What were some of your favorites? What were your rankings? Let me know in the comments below and I'll be sure to look into those. If you did enjoy, I worked very hard on this video and I made sure to get it out like a month after the year ended so I could see the stuff I wanted to see. So please do consider just dropping a like or a subscription if you want to see more of my stuff. Have a good one, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.